Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and I'm here with a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We're so glad that you're with us today. I missed last week, so I'm really ready to get back to it as we talk about all aspects of relationship. This has been a series that has been going on for quite a while. There's more and more and more to say. You will see me fiddling, by the way, this morning because I got a cat on my lap and a dog at my back. That's why I'm not sitting up higher. Can't get the pillow there because the dog's there. It's just the way it is when you broadcast from home, right? We're going to talk about, oh, hello, everyone. Hello, Kat, and hello, Lisa. Loving you too, girlfriends. Awfully glad to have you with us. Awfully glad to have all of you with us. I see a lot of other people are joining us as well. So thank you so much for being so supportive of this show and of me, as I am absolutely of you. It's the reason I do these shows, right? Guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving and that you're heading into the Christmas season with a great deal of optimism and I don't know anybody right now that's not saying we're in the middle. I don't know when people are going to listen to this show because all shows, of course, are archived. So they're archived on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube. But we're in the middle of COVID and the second kind of wave of this that is bad. And I think most people, I think, that are have some adaptability are going with and actually finding that a pretty good thing, that they can see that it's okay. It's a new way of living, right? And other people are struggling quite a bit. I've said all along, and as a matter of fact, in my book, The Life You Want, I think the first line is, we're in the age of individual consciousness. I think I said it a little more eloquently than that, but maybe not. But this is the age of individual consciousness. This is about us waking up to who we are inside. You see, so many of us for so long, and this is the way all of us were reared, we have relied on the church to tell us who we are, and our businesses, and the traditional family, and many other things. These were things all outside of us. And we're at the place now, and this energy on the planet, worldwide energy, that is about waking up individually and going on individually, finding out who we are in deeper levels of consciousness and who we are as the aspect of God we are, and giving out of that. So that's what this show is about. It has always been about that, even before COVID. And we continue our journey. Now, when you read a lot of these shows and what they're about, you'll find they're about just about every aspect of our lives. We are now talking about relationships because I think relationships are very, very important in the scheme of things. Some of you are single, some of you are in partnership, some of you are married and have been for quite a long time. Whatever your status, you need to know this information. You need to see where you're weak and how to improve, and where you're strong. And we grow together in deeper levels of faith and joy and creativity and intimacy. And that's the point of our talk. Today, we're going to talk about flirting as a first step. Then we're going to talk about some insights about who we choose to marry, who we choose to partner with. I'm using marriage and partnership interchangeably. We're going to talk about some basic needs that people have in marriages. We're going to talk about what husbands need from their wives every day, what wives need from their husbands every day. And we're going to talk about relationship killers. Now, I don't know I'm going to get through all of that today. I don't think so. So I'm going to say that we'll run over into next week. if I don't finish. Guys, let's do a prayer and get ourselves all on the same page, and then we'll launch into the material. Is that all right with you? I'm sure it is. Okay, let's go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for being here together today, opening ourselves to the information you have for us on all sorts of different levels. We open ourselves to the grace that exists in us in deeper levels of our consciousness, where truth resides. Show us the steps we need to take and comfort us, because everyone is struggling right now in some way. It's an energy that's happening in the world. So we open ourselves to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We buck up our courage. We are not afraid. We say, we know. You are there. You always have been. You always will be. And we would like now, at least in these 90 minutes, to merge with you, that we may understand more. We thank you, dear God, for all of this. We open ourselves and say we know nothing, for it is the you through all of us and through everything that knows it all. We will stop struggling so much and striving and grasping and being afraid. For 90 minutes, we are yours and open. And hopefully, it is my fondest hope that you carry the peace in these 90 minutes forward into your lives, and you're able to hold on to it. And we say this in your name, dear God, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, in the name of everybody listening to this show. And so it is. Okay, kids. I have my regular glasses that are my prescription glasses, are at the, having to change lenses. So I'm using kind of drugstore glasses right now. And let's hope I can see out of them. Not very well, I will assure you. Some of the print is smaller than others. I found an interesting article. I found several interesting articles for us today, some of which I agree with, and some of which I do not. And I am not disparaging anybody's articles, not at all. I wouldn't do that. As a writer, I believe that we all have the opportunity to think what we do think and express ourselves the way we do. However, you keep in mind that the end result of anything that I do, whether it's in private session or whether it's with you on the radio, is to the end of consciousness, deepening us in that, in the love that we are, in the ascended energies of God that we are, right? Beyond the ego child's mind and the fear-based experience. All of that is us. We should not vilify one or the other of us, of this duality, this love-based, this fear-based. But it is the divine journey to go from fear to love. And that's what we are doing together. So I'm always teaching a little bit beyond some of these articles because my end result is different. So there we are. So I will start off talking about the article and then I'll, there I go. Okay? All right. Just for those of you that don't know me. All right, here we go. I found a really good article. I actually like this article. It's called The 6 Reasons People Flirt, according to a psychologist. It's written by Christine Schoenwald, or Schoenwald. I always try to pronounce the W as a V because of my husband, who's Austrian. Anyway, she goes on to say in this article, and I think it's an interesting article, that some people are born flirts, that they can't help themselves. They'll talk to anybody, while they're waiting in line for the DMV or whatever. We're all, talking to each other. Okay. It's a lot of times their natural way of dealing with the world. Now, one of the things I liked about this article is that she's really talking about why you talk to people or flirt from the ego child's mind and from the highest self mind. That's really what this is about. And the ego child's mind is part of my work. Okay, it's a phrase I coined in my work, because when I'm working with people, I'm often seeing what they're doing in the ego child's mind, but my job is to release those things more and more, resolve them, have them see the larger picture around it, and go to a more love-centered experience, which is the higher ascended mind. Okay. She points out, and I think this is a good one, and here's a real difference in flirting and talking to people, a real difference between why the ego child's mind does it and why the higher self does it. Now, keep in mind that when we're talking about this, we always have this duality. It behooves all of us to wake up and say, which mind am I working from? This is one of the things that confuses us so much, because in our unawareness, it all seems like one mind. Genuinely, it is, quite frankly. But as we are healing, we've really got to see the difference between minds and why we are doing things. Good morning, Hope. And where we're coming from. Okay, so she goes on to say, if you are flirting and want absolutely nothing in return, if you're talking to people absolutely just to talk to them and wanting nothing in return, she says you may be more of a charmer than a flirter. And I think that's true. I think that the fact is, if we want nothing in return, it's very charming. We're working from the highest self. But flirters sometimes are friendly and kind, but sometimes their motives are, watch out for this, gain. And to convince somebody to give them what they want. Now, none of this is said on the surface, right? Not often. In other words, these kinds of flirters are master manipulators. And I want to talk about that, because one of the things I want you to do is think about this relative to you. Relative to you. And if you've got these traits, let's change them. There is a review of literature on flirting. It was published in 2004 by the Northern Illinois University professor David Dryden Henningsen. And he identified 6 different kinds of motivations for flirting. Also, please keep in mind that it isn't the gesture that we make overtly that's important here. It's the motivation behind it. That really reveals everything always. The motivation behind it. You know, many times when we are saying in our pretend grown-up selves, I'm not at all like my father. My father was this. We're exactly like him, because it isn't what we're doing on the surface. We do something different so nobody will find us out and that we don't have to look ourselves. It's the motivation that's the exact same thing in many cases. So it's the motivation that tells all. So here are the 6 main reasons and what they're motivated by that people flirt. Number 1, they motivate for sex. Flirting gets someone to sleep with you. Number 2, they flirt for fun. Flirting is a sport. Number 3, exploring. Flirting is a relationship practice. 4, relational. Flirting to increase intimacy. 5, esteem, flirting to increase your own self-worth or their own self-worth. And 6, instrumental, flirting to get something from someone else. Now, she draws a huge difference, so do I, between, and she's using these words to describe the motivation from the egoic child's mind and the highest self. I think when we're flirting or we are charming, she draws a real difference. You're either a flirter or a charmer. That's what they're saying here. If you are certainly in the highest self, what you are concerned with is making everybody feel valuable and important. Why? Well, do you remember I said that there is a formula to the highest self. The formula to the highest self is that you and I make an agreement. The agreement is important. To agree or to disagree. It's an agreement. You and I are both in the mix. You understand? Okay. I'm going back to some of the things that you've heard from me before, but I think it's important to put everybody on the same page here. The ego child's mind doesn't have a formula. It's all about me at the expense of you, if I'm in the ego child's mind. Or it's all about you at the expense of me. That still makes it all about me, because I've just made myself a victim, and I'm going to eventually focus entirely on that. And it's going to be about my resentment and all those things that come along with that. So you're either in the higher mind and flirting because you're reaching out. It's a nice thing to do, communication. We're in a family of God here. Or you are doing it for lesser reasons. If you flirt, sometimes we use our sexual attractiveness to manipulate another person. Sometimes in innocuous ways, but sometimes in kind of creepy ways. Now, both charmers and flirters, again, I'm going to just use her terminology, make eye contact and have warmth in their voices. But flirters almost always have an agenda. In other words, the ego child mind always has an agenda. I'm going to tell you the highest self always has an agenda too, okay? It's a more loving agenda. But when we're talking about life and friendships, not just lovers and partners here, the ones that you feel closest to, safest with, are the ones of the people that have agendas similar to yours. I have an agenda. I'm sitting here teaching you. I want your life to be better. I want you to be happy. You want that too. That's why we make a good team, you see. But everybody doesn't feel that way, dear hearts. And people sometimes have very selfishly motivated agendas. And you have to be discerning and see those people and realize that everybody's got an agenda and figure out what that is. You understand? So this does not mean going around in life and just being happy, and loving everybody because some spiritual teacher told you to do that. I want you to be discerning. Be discerning. Now, guys, I think the whole reason you're drawn to a teaching like this, and I'm leaving this article for a minute, is because there's something wonderful about human nature. You know what it is? We want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We want to, unless we've been trained, in other words. We want to, okay? Well, guys, that's what Ted Bundy played on when he asked these beautiful young women to help him with the book because he had a broken leg or a broken arm. And he'd get him over to the car and he said, "Would you put it in my car, please, so I don't have to lean over and do it. It hurts." And he hit him over the head, and that was the end. Guys, discernment is part of God, too. We have to be discerning. We have to accept that as part of this program of consciousness, deepening consciousness. Now, back to the article. Okay. Flirters always have an egoic, though, is what she's saying, translating, agenda. It's a more selfish agenda. Getting there, she says, accounting instructor to change their grade, or flirting their way out of a traffic ticket or something like that. Flirting can actually hurt people, especially when you take a flirter's actions or words seriously when that isn't their true intention. For example, if a flirter is only flirting to see if they can get someone to respond, or if that person believes if that other person, the person that they are flirting with, believes the flirter's emotions are real, they might start thinking this could lead to a relationship. Guys, this is how a lot of you get in trouble, because you don't honestly know what you're doing. I think sometimes you've got a leg in both worlds, the lower ego child's mind and the higher self mind, and it gets all confused. Let's shine a cold light of day on it and stop some of these low-level practices, because I think this is what gets you in trouble. This is what makes relationships messy. So obviously, this person that believed the flirter is going to feel let down once the flirter achieves his goal and moves on, right? Okay. Some flirters are womanizers and narcissists. Some of them are man-eaters and narcissists who enjoy chasing and then dumping once they get someone to respond to them. So these people sometimes sometimes don't know what they're doing. But there are people out there that really enjoy seeing other people hurt. Be very careful when you're doing this. This is a very important step for everybody, okay? And I say this to you if you've been married 30 years. I mean, we're not dead. We're still flirting. We're still charming. We're still out there making relationships in some way or another. Let's clean them up, So how can you tell if someone seems to be flirting with you or is being very charming? How can you tell if the intentions are real? Well, in my opinion, there are 3 ways to do this out of this article here. One is what I'm saying to you. You must be very discerning. You must now accept the fact that everybody's got an agenda. Find out what theirs is. Now, the thing about dating and thing about getting to know people is everybody is pretty much presenting the best of them, all right? And they're agreeing a lot more often because they want you to like them. It is time that is the second thing here. Be discerning and then have some time to get to know this person. They'll reveal themselves. Everybody's agenda ultimately reveals themselves. Watch for it. Look for it. See it. Oh, and let's not forget the person that is, enormously agreeable. Do everything you say, and you see that it's real and that this person is going to want to do that. Do you realize there's no place for that to go but this person resenting you? Now, they are the ones that gave it to you, and it feels mighty good, doesn't it? They're going to really resent you, and they're going to blame you. So you're not looking for that either. You're looking for a nice, balanced woman or man that is real. Okay. The third part of this is and it has to do with time, is my advice is do not rush to outcomes. There are many people that rush to outcomes. They don't stay in the moment. They don't fully realize what's going on. They're too busy rushing ahead and trying to get what they want. I always am suspicious of anybody that rushes to outcomes. I've never met one that can go down into deep levels of themselves and consciousness, and not one of them knows how to work through a problem, which, by the way, you better know how to do if you're going to have a relationship, or a really good one. You see? So don't rush to outcomes. Give everything time and be discerning. Those are my 3 pieces of advice. Okay, so that was that article. What mind are you working from? What mind are you working from? I think a lot of times, guys, we don't take the time in our lives to get ourselves in the higher mind. If you think it's just going to turn on automatically, well, it does, but not always when you want it to. And it's extremely important that if that is going to be your life experience, your living experience, if this is what you're striving for, being kind and loving no matter what, then you need to prepare for it. I do suggest that you meditate, or you do some writing in the morning, automatic writing in the morning, that you take some time to be in the higher mind before you begin the day. Only then do you have rather benchmark that you can feel, right? They'll keep you there. And you all have all heard me mention the CD, Sound Mind, Sound Body. I don't know whether there are other formats for this, but it's an Andrew Weil CD. And I happen to like this very much because it's a brainwave technology. He starts you in alpha, drops you to theta, drops you to delta, comes back to theta, drops you in alpha. It's about an hour long. It's perfectly beautiful music, very classically inspired music on the top. Your brainwaves start matching these brainwaves in about 5 or 10 minutes. The alpha brainwave is the brainwave peak performance, by the way. Theta is associated with the pre-sleep state. Delta is associated with sleep. But I'm going to tell you right now that all of these brainwaves, I find myself when I'm doing a private session on someone, I'm going through all of them all the time, because information is on all those levels for me to pick up. So you can stay perfectly focused and perfectly aware while you're listening to this. It's not going to happen the first 2 or 3 weeks. You're going to fall asleep. That's okay. It's still working on your brain, because what this is doing is training you to stay in the lower brainwave states. I do suggest that you listen to this once a day. Do you have to sit there with your legs crossed in the yoga position? No. Brainwave technologies work so that you can just put them on in your home. Do not listen to them in the car. You're going to be in an altered state. Do not, do not, do not, do not. Only when you're doing something very repetitive at home. And if you would do that every day for 2 to 3 months, you'd be training yourself to stay in their lower brainwave states. What's the advantage of that? Creativity and less fear. And a lot more. So please take me seriously about that. I think it could help you get ready for the day. Okay? You know, I don't like routine. Do you? I don't like routine at all. I am a creative, and I like things exciting and new and different all the time. That's what I try to create in my life. Michael calls it chaos sometimes, but I very much like that. It keeps my brain active. It keeps me thinking out of the box. But I swear to goodness, I very much find value in discipline. A lot of value in discipline. Every morning, I actually scan the day. I open myself to any information that's coming to me throughout the day. I'm touching my poodle, who's just sitting up behind me, if you see my hand going back there. I have a discipline that I go to most days, and it's really helpful. But I don't just plunge into my day reacting to things. You don't want to react to things. You want to choose. You want to choose things. So no, there's some work to be done there. Set a discipline. Get up at a certain hour. Meditate or listen to that CD while you're making the cats their food. Whatever you need to do, you should have a little discipline, certainly. Oh, puppy. All right. Certainly as you start the day. Now, I found another article. I like this article to a certain extent. Actually, I didn't like this article as much as I liked some of the others. It was just the language, it's a little off-putting to me. So here we go. Let's talk about this article. This is 7 fascinating insights about who you choose to marry and why. It's written by the same woman, this Christine Schoenval. I'd like to talk about this, why we choose the people we choose to marry or to partner with. There are many reasons why you feel a deep soul connection to someone in the moment that you meet. And some of them are actually from the highest self, and some of them are not. They're from the egoic child's mind. So let's go into some of this, and I'm going to launch off like I am wont to do. All right. She takes this article from the family psychologist and author Irina Chesnova. I love that name. Isn't that wonderful? Looks like it ought to be on a marquee. Irina Chesnova. She is the one that did the research on this. So number one insight about who you choose to partner with is they trigger flashes of our past for us. Now, this is when it's a pretty good past or that we felt comforted and loved. It doesn't mean you had a great childhood either. It just means there was one little thing. I remember one client many years ago told me that the only time she ever felt love in her life from her parent was one time they took her, she had a fall and they took her to the doctor. That says a lot, doesn't it? One time. Okay, she felt cared about. But if somebody comes along and reminds you of that, and there's a flash somehow subconsciously in that, you're going to choose that person, you're going to call it love. We all hold images of people, she goes on to say, who played significant parts in our lives when we grew up. The people who made us who we are today. The images of our parents, neighbors, relatives are a combination of reality and, I'm going to say, myth. And I can stretch it a little further and say lies. Sometimes they're just out and out lies. Nobody remembers with historical accuracy. Oh, come on. We're not even designed that way. We're designed to have issues so that we can evolve from them. That's how our souls grow. That's how we as people grow. So that's what it's about. So we tend to be intrigued. We tend to work ourselves up, and very soon we call it love. Now, I want to put something else in here. Okay, we're going to follow her format, but let me say one other thing, because we're calling a lot of things love that, by the way, are not. So let's just get this on the table. This is part of my program, for sure. There is something inside of you called resonance. Now, I'm going to give you a definition for this, and I'm going to talk to you about this. It has nothing to do with what anybody else is talking about. This is something I observed when I was working with actors, and I observe it now when I'm working with people. There's something called resonance. It is a secret emotion or state of being deep down inside of you. It is something unresolved. It lives, actually, it has a placement in the body, in the bowels of you, deep in the colon, where you don't even want to look. I mean, my God, it's yucky in there, right? But it's this thing that wakes us up in the middle of the night and haunts us like something heavy sitting on our chests and makes us get up and clean the refrigerator so we can avoid it. That's resonance. It can be a lot of things. Low self-esteem, guilt about something. It can be all rage. It can be all sorts of things that we don't let out, that it's down there, and it's just there to kind of get us in our unguarded moments. All these things are neither bad nor good. It doesn't make a happy life if you have resonance. What most people do, or a lot of people do, when they realize there's something wrong, is they'll go and they'll, get somebody, a therapist, to work it out with them. And it has to be worked out, guys. You can't carry that around like a baggage. Many people do, by the way. Many people do. And what's so odd about this, okay, is when you meet somebody that has the same resonance, and you remember what I said is, it's a secret. It's something that is not talked about. If you're not careful, you'll call it love. This is why you need to know these things. Now, I think any kind of relationship is stronger when you have two emotionally mature people that come together, don't you? Two generous people that come together. I think that's just great. You look out for resonance, because that is something that's wrong with someone. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It means there's something to work out here. And if you just feel that automatically, oh, I just love you, nobody's understood you like me, and I've never been understood by anybody like you, I'd be suspicious of what that is. Because over time, people naturally grow, if you're doing it all right, of course. And as you come out of that, you hate that person sitting in front of you because they're what you're trying to lose. Insecurity, whatever. But your insecurity, or your low self-esteem, or your whatever, is looking across the breakfast table at you every single day. It's very important to know there's something called resonance, to see if you have it, and to work it out. Then you can attract someone that doesn't have it either. Okay? And if you've attracted someone that does have it, for heaven's sakes, then you've got to work around it. And we'll talk about that, how to work around it. Let me just say this, because I hate to just say, wait. All right. Every person in the world has only two issues, and every issue that they have falls under these two things. You remember what they are? You don't care about me is number one, and number two is I don't get what I want. I never get what I want. Those two things. You don't care about me, I never get what I want. Those are the only two issues anybody ever argues about. They're the only two issues that ever drive us. All right. That said, knowing that those are the big umbrella issues and that everything else falls under that, conduct yourself as a partner trying not to trigger those things off. You don't want to trigger those things off if you're a loving partner, do you? And you want to have this conversation with your partner so your partner doesn't trigger those things off. You don't care about me. And it can come out in all sorts of ways. Suppose your partner just tells you everything you're doing wrong. Are you going to feel cared about? Suppose your partner tries to control everything you do. Are you going to feel cared about? No, you're going to feel like an idiot. If your partner's always thwarting you and telling you can't do something, you're going to ever feel like, I never get what I get what I want? No, you're going to feel like I never get what I want. You have got to avoid triggering those two things in any partnership. That's the best advice I know, over and above any of these articles that I found for you. Conduct your life so you don't trigger those things. Now, we're bound to trigger them once in a while. We get busy, right? And our partners are a little neglected during a period of time, or we are neglected during a period of time. We must be patient. This has to be reasonable, of course, right? Good. Her second point in this article, we're looking at insights about who you choose to marry, as they remind us of our parents, good or bad. You have two poles, the mother and the father. You do. You have two poles, all right? If we liked them both, great. If we didn't like them both, we tend to run away from one parent and run to the characteristics of the other parent in other people, you see. But that's always being the child. That's never growing up and finding out who you are, because you're neither one of these poles. They've influenced you. But the whole progress of trying to find who you are authentically in deeper levels of consciousness has nothing to do with these poles at all. But when in our unawareness we seek our parents. Even if you had an unhappy parent and you were unhappy with that parent, you are seeking to right that relationship by drawing somebody in just like them so you can work it out with them. Interesting thing is that nobody told the other person that. They don't know that they remind you of someone you didn't like or have not resolved an issue with. In consciousness studies, we have to provide for the self. We have to learn to parent ourselves. This is what we're here to do. We are here to become the beneficent mother and the beneficent father to ourselves. We are here not necessarily to look to the other partner. She has something that is the third thing here, her third point. Are you ready for this? She says they complete us. There is no more egoic expression concerning partnerships than you complete me. Nobody will complete you. You are supposed to do it yourself. I know a lot of people that are uncomfortable with emotion, so they marry a man or a woman who is more emotional, and through that relationship, they experience emotion. I think that is very immature. We are supposed to understand ourselves, know who we are. We're supposed to be comfortable with it all. We must know how to parent ourselves and show up in our partnerships and in our marriage that way. What are you doing to care for yourself? You see, when we are in the egoic child's mind, it's selfish. When we are in the higher mind, it's the same energy, and it's the right thing to do is to take care of ourselves. I've said one of the ways you do that is knowing who you are and what your balance points are. What are balance points? Balance points are those things, those parts of your life that you would not be yourself without. They are what's important to you, what you must never give up, no matter what partner you have or whether you're alone. For example, mine are, I love words and I love writing and I love creativity. You would not see me as anything but miserable without those things. I love animals. I love animals. I love nature. I love beauty. These are the important things to me. I would venture to say, if you ask Michael what his was, his list would have some things in common with mine and some things that are very different. Why isn't that all right? Of course it is. Nobody should be there to complete you. Nobody should be there to take care of you. Nobody should be there to provide for you. You're supposed to do all that for yourself. Now get going, girls and boys, because this is the way it is. This is life. This is the full life. Is it easy? Nah. Is it fulfilling? Yeah. There's nothing more fulfilling than being responsible for yourself on these levels. In life, people get being selfish mixed up with the higher energies of you're doing the right thing to do for you and what you think is right in the world. They get confused by that because they're confused by that in themselves. They don't have the right language. Again, the thing that confuses us in life about consciousness, about religion, about God, about us, is that there are two minds at work here. Which one are you in? You must know that. Which one are you in? What's your motivation? You've got to know. And then all of a sudden, you've got a very important element of your sense of self. And so you hear all of this blather that's going on in the world, and it doesn't bother you so much. You know who you are. You know what you need to do for you. You know what you have done and what you have not done. And you do these things. You go about setting these things right. Okay. So get the old idea out that somebody's going to complete you. Get the whole idea out about old souls and new souls. That's the biggest load of crap there has ever been. Everybody is the aspect of God that they are. They have always been. You're using that as a narcissistic element when you're talking about people. Stop it. Don't be a narcissist. We're all narcissists, by the way. We're all narcissists, every one of us. But we're all here to learn something, and what we're learning is something different. Aspects that are all different, but all part of God in high and low frequencies. Let's just go on. Let's just do the work on ourselves, right? Thank you. Number 4, according to Ms. Schoenwald, is we are attracted to people and choose to marry them or partner with them because they're in the same place as us. I think that what she's talking about here, and quite frankly, is resonance. They're in the same place as us. The danger is it's not talked about, it's not said, and we're calling it love. Find out what that is. Find out what that is that you just cannot live without this person about. Do they understand your grief because they're grieved? Are they just as angry as you are, but covering it up with niceties, people pleasing? What's going on there? Now, this does not doom a relationship. You understand that, right? It absolutely does not. But knowing what we have to do for ourselves certainly precipitates that we can grow out of that and become more of our potential. And if you've done your due diligence well, you've got a partner like that too. If you don't have a partner like that, a partner who refuses to grow, who doesn't want, who even disparages it, is that going to stop you? Isn't this one of your balance points to grow and change and become and be fulfilled? Of course it does. Do it anyway. A lot of times, if we're in the child's mind, we want somebody to come with us. This is the time to put on your Leo boots, kids, and to get out there and have courage to do it yourself. You must grow. You must do it. Don't worry about them. You must do it. Okay. She has number 5, which is their relationship with us is constantly changing. She says that okay, she says at the start of a relationship, people have a tendency to hide their real feelings, I'm saying that too, and at the same time see a perfect version of their partners. Okay, so what she's saying here, I'm sorry, but I've got to translate it into our language, is don't idealize someone. If we grew up with some sort of fantasy going on, Sheila, good morning, darling, and I'm just so glad to see all of you. And that's my darling, my darling cousin. Hello, sweetie. I'm so glad that you're with me today. One of the things that all children do, is fantasize. It's one of the things that children do to continue to function in any kind of hard situation. Even if a mother or father is missing from the home, let's say they have died or they've run off, as the child is growing up, they're going to have a fantasy mother, a fantasy father, a fantasy them, a fantasy idea of family, a fantasy possible God. It's what we do. It's part of our creativity as children. You understand? But what she's saying here is that when we emotionally mature, we've got to confront the fantasies. They absolutely must go. Part of fantasy is idealism. I'm marrying Superman. But he's not going to be Superman in the end. He's going to be a man. I'm marrying, Marilyn Monroe, Mother Teresa, anything that you fantasize. No, she's just going to be a woman. The fantasies have to go. And it's best that they come off and you see the person realistically before this relationship. Because you can so idealize somebody that you're not really happy with the reality when it presents itself, and it will. She goes on to say, she's quoting Cherzinova, who says, learn to negotiate, to respect differences, and to recognize the right of everyone, not to be the ideal. I agree with that. Accept people for who they are. Number 6, we often partner with people because they don't want to change us. Well, I think that we shouldn't try to change people, do you? Absolutely not. We are all who we are. We all believe what we believe. That doesn't mean we don't have open minds, but we shouldn't force each other to be anything we're not, or force each other to be anything different. I do say there's something wonderful we can do for each other as partners, and that is to hold the image of how the other person wants to be seen. We actually put this in our marriage vows, Michael and I. In other words, I hold an image of him that he's a good man. He's always trying his best. He is loving. He's kind. He's deeply sensitive. And I probably have several more than I can think of. Those are just off the top of my head. Even when he is in one of his more selfish moments, we call those moments gorp, I try never to forget those things. And the same thing happens even when I'm being the asshole. Michael has some things that he always remembers about me. We also decided that love was a privilege. We're in agreement about that love is a privilege. And no matter how mad we get with each other, what's going on, we try always to make our way back to knowing that and to realize we've got to work this out. We've got to work our little magic here and come up with a solution where we both get what we want, right? You also, number 7 is she says, they have what you need for a successful relationship. Oh, I kind of cringe the way she said certain things here. But I agree with this one, because people have to have some basic tools of a good partnership. They have to be honest. I'm putting that one in. Not that anybody would come along and take your wallet out of your purse and steal your money. That's not the kind of honesty we're talking about, but emotional honesty is what we're talking about. I had a couple that worked with me, and they never argued. Everything was just wonderful all the time. And you know what? It was not. They were just not honest people. They were in total fantasy. He liked the fact that she put him in fantasy. She was a fantasist. Everybody was a fantasist. They actually were quite unhappy with each other for a lot of reasons I won't go into now. The first thing I saw was, come on, let's tell each other the truth about what's going on here. Because I saw these secret resentments building up big time. The only chance you've got is to face what's going on here and to work through the problems, which I'm happy to say they did. I do think communication is really important, but most people are not good communicators because they're not comfortable with the truth of what they feel. So you better get comfortable with that, and you better find a partner that can talk to you on that level without being afraid. And everybody needs to work on their presentation of how they feel, so it's not a scary presentation, right? You want to find somebody that's positive so you can have positive interactions. Living with somebody negative, oh my God in heaven, it's terrible. Try to find someone who's positive, who sees the good. And if you find yourself as the negative one, work on that. Minds can be changed. Start seeing the good and the gifts in things. because that's something that came from your childhood, seeing it a certain way. Sometimes it even comes from our cultures. But there's nothing wrong with that, except it doesn't make you happy. And it's not the foundation for a great partnership. You want to have someone who does not blame, and you want to not blame. And if somebody accuses you of blaming, you better stand up for yourself and say, nope, here's what was going on. I'm sorry you misinterpreted that. I was not doing that. You want to have someone that does not accuse. You don't want to have somebody that manipulates. You want to have someone that has a mutual desire to grow and who can be honest and open and loving when they're talking about the pain and the conflict they're in. And you sure as heck want someone patient. So I'm going to put that on I'll put that on the table right now. Okay. There are some basic needs, I think, when you partner. So let's talk about those. These are basic needs that every person has. All right, we're going to talk about men and women and the differences in just a few minutes. But I do first want to talk about an article that came down the pike by Aaron Schreiner, 10 Basic Needs in Marriages, in Partnerships, in Good Relationships. As we all know, living with someone is a complicated union. It just is. Living with someone is work. All right? So put that on the table. All the airy-fairy stuff about, no, it isn't, is ridiculous, because it is. If you're doing it right, you're going to have to work on this. All right? One of the first needs, she says, is trust. Now let's talk about trust. Across the board, trust is not possible. But that you trust that person as a good person. That you trust that person as an honest person. That you trust that person as someone who always tries his or her best. That you trust that person on that level of their personhood is entirely doable. I would hope that you don't choose someone to partner with that you can't trust on that level. Do we occasionally, speaking for myself, run over a curb with the car and dent the whatever, the undercarriage? Do we do things like that? We all do. Absolutely. I'm not talking about trust on that level. I'm talking about trust as the human being you are. Do you trust them? In a successful marriage, on that level, partners trust each other. They also look to see what they're saying and if they're doing it too. I'll never forget that at some point in the early part of our marriage, I don't tend to fight too much anymore, but in the early part of our marriage, when we were getting to know each other, you know, I said, "You're an asshole." He said, "You're an asshole." And I said, "Yeah, I am," you know. So let's go on and admit that we are. But do you understand that that's staying on the same level? Nobody's going to find solutions in that. So we quickly went, okay, so we got that on the table. Now let's figure out what we're doing here and make it all right. And we did. I don't even remember what the argument was about. When you trust like that, in essence, and the first person I ever heard talk about a bank account was Stephen Covey, but you really are putting energy into a bank account, aren't you? You know, when you have a trustworthy person, you are. Therefore, when there is a misstep somewhere along the line, you have all this bank account that you've built up. You know that, we all have weak moments. We all have thoughtless moments. We all have forgetful moments. We all have all kinds of moments. Sometimes we make just blooming bad mistakes. But if you have this bank account of trust, if you know who that person really is, you'll be all right. You'll be able to get through it. You'll be able to work through it. What alarms me sometimes these days is that people are hooking up, hoping for something in the future that would last. And yet, they don't know this person is a trustworthy person. I find that unfathomable, really. Now, this isn't an age thing. This isn't me at my age talking to you at your younger, in your youth. This is, if you're going to have a good relationship, the same rules apply as they always did. Find out who that person is and whether they're trustworthy or not. And you make yourself over into a trustworthy person. Here's the interesting thing. You're not trustworthy at all until your idea of yourself grows up. God's not trustworthy either until your idea of God grows up. The little boy and girl fantasies that we have of ourselves and our God and our families and who a great partner would be, the fantasies are in the way. And we've got to grow those things up. We've got to emotionally mature, spiritually mature. And so you shall. I like this Erin Schreiner because she has mentioned some things, however casually, that I want to talk about and that I think we ought to talk about. And one is honesty. We have talked about that. But what we don't know how to do is to speak up lovingly. Certainly, we can talk about partners being dishonest with one another, the affairs that people have, white lies that people tell. Those things cannot be for a good partnership. They undermine trust, of course. You can't be a little boy who's hiding what you do. You can't be a little girl who shops until she drops and then hides the packages. You can't do that. All of those kinds of behaviors and more, out and out affairs, reflect emotional immaturity. And a great marriage requires a great deal of emotional maturity. No matter how much you say you love each other, you got to be an emotionally mature person. An emotionally mature person. Two whole people coming together. That's the best. Now, what happens if you don't have that? Well, you better work on yourself. You better make yourself happy. You better learn more about you. Let's have you grow. I've said and used this image over and over and over again. Here it is. So you've got a pot of soup. That's your relationship. And both of you are throwing in, let's say, rotten fruit, rotten vegetables in there. And the stew ain't so good. But what happens if you wake up and you start putting in very healthy ones, very clean and fresh ones? Well, the relationship improves, doesn't it? And perhaps it will inspire the other person, even if they don't want to work on themselves, to put the same thing in one day. Simplistic, I know, that image, but I've seen it work. And I've also seen it not work. But I've seen every single time the person that grows ends up happy. Not happy necessarily in the way they think they're going to be happy. We all say, oh, we're going to partner with this person and life is going to be wonderful. It's just going to be... No, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes to stay with someone, we have to make ourselves happy at work or happy in our book writing or our painting or our doing this. We have to fulfill ourselves in a lot of other ways because the fairy tale doesn't always come true the way we think it will. There's a great value in realizing exactly where you are, though. And in doing for you, not out of, well, screw them, but because it's the right thing to do. Caring and loving yourself in that way. I thought we had a phone call, but they disappeared. The next basic need in marriage is emotional connection. Absolutely. We must be sensitive to each other's wants and needs. It's difficult when somebody won't tell you what those are. At which time you do the best you can, right? That's all that's on the table. And you go about fulfilling your own life, guys. If you don't, and if you stay home and you don't create, and you don't do anything, you know what you're going to do? You're going to resent and blame, because you're going to focus on the one thing that's wrong, and it's that person over there. And that's really not who you are. If we're right about you as God, as the aspect of God you are, and we all are, right? In addition to ego and all the child's mind stuff, then we can be that loving. We can make sure that we're fulfilled in different ways and go home and be kind. Of course we can. And you'll be able to live with that a lot better because you will be growing yourself. One of the needs in marriages is empathy, and they've done some long-term study on that. And they found that empathy is critical to a good marriage, where you feel for the other person. We must always make sure we don't say, I know exactly how you feel, because nobody knows exactly how we feel. But that there is a part of us that is certainly understanding of what another person is going through is a beautiful thing. And we're all lucky to have that when we indeed have that. I want to put on the table there's difference between empathy and oversympathy. An oversympathy will have you dissolve in depression, dissolve in unhappiness. You can't do that. That you understand and then you go about life and growth, you've got to do that. But you cannot dissolve in so feeling what someone else is feeling or thinking you do that it's an insult and disparaging and doesn't help anybody. Research recently has shown that empathy is one of the big things that holds people together, and novelty is the other thing that contributes to happiness. Now let's talk about that. I'm off this subject for a moment. Novelty being you go do what you think is fun and you enjoy. And hopefully the other person does the same thing. And then everybody loves what they're doing and they rush home and tell each other. Isn't that fun? That's novelty. And they say that really also, in addition to empathy, is also is one of the things that make marriages happy over time. It's not that you all have to do the same things, but that both of you have to be learning and growing, you see. And that's something. You learn something from each other. Certainly physical affection is important in marriages. That's the other one that she mentions. Physical affection is important. Even after sex diminishes, gentle touches, tender kisses, pats on the back, feet rubs. That's the key to my heart. Those things do matter. They really do. We've talked about communication. They talk about togetherness time. I know how difficult it is to find togetherness time, but it really is important. And I think it needs to be talked about in this day of COVID, because we say, oh, we're all home, we're stuck with each other, blah, blah, blah. But how creative is the stuck with each other being, I think it's really important to be creative here. Nothing is stopping you from going on a day road trip, having virtual dinners with friends over Skype and Zoom and all the other platforms we have here. We can watch movies and documentaries and television shows on television and talk about those things. I mean, are they placed where we've traveled? Look at that. We've been there. That kind of thing. It's so much fun. Having mutual hobbies is great, but doing everything together, not so great. That's a fantasy. You all are two different people. You should have different interests. You should develop them. I know some couples very caught in the ego child's mind that don't like the other person to have an interest because they want all the attention on themselves. I think that's very cruel. We should be growing. We should be changing. We should be getting out there. Next is shared goals. Couples, she says, have to have shared goals for your marriage to remain strong. They have to be working toward the same things. I think that's true. It isn't always obvious what your goal is, though, in consciousness. It isn't always obvious. And I think that's what makes it fun. And I'm always looking at whatever I'm teaching you relative to my own marriage. I try to share with you those things. I think Michael and I very strongly have a mutual goal. We've talked about it indirectly. I didn't think we've talked about it directly. Now that I realized what I did this morning, I'm certainly going to mention this to him. One of the things I love about us is that our goal is growth. I can't wait to know more about the next level of what I'm supposed to know. Here I am writing a book on fiction. I've never done that before, but I am dedicated to being a good writer. Man, I've learned more in this last year than I've learned in the last 20. And there's a lot more to go, I'll tell you that right now. Michael is building a boat in the basement. He found a little flat level boat kit, and it's a sailboat that doesn't have a deep keel because where we live, the lake that we live on has a lot of, it's in the mountains, in the high mountains. It's the highest lake on the East Coast. So there are a lot of crosswinds and cross currents. So a sailboat with a deep keel would never work on this lake. But Michael has sailed all over the world, and I think he very much missed it. So he actually found this little flat-bottom kind of sailboat kit, and he's building that in the basement. I love that about him. I could no more help other than when he screams, hammer, hand him a hammer, which I haven't done. He's not there yet. But I'll tell you what, when I look at what we both do to make ourselves happy, it's very exciting. It's all about growth. Now, I hope that you all will have partners that are doing that, will do that, wake up to that at some point in time. But if you do not, let's not get caught up in the little girl, little boy fantasy of, and they lived happily ever after in that way. Let's open our minds to making ourselves happy and fulfilled and learning new things and growing and sharing that with our partners. partners in some way. That's my idea of shared goals. It isn't that we both have to write a book, you see. It's about what really motivates us to do anything. The next thing she says is confidence. I'm going to tell you what I think about all these things because I just looked at our time and we've got 9 minutes, so it will be better if I just jump right to what I say. We need 2 confident people in a marriage. We don't need one of them second guessing and always needing the other one to say, it's going to be all right, right? A strongest marriage has 2 confident people who are equally invested in committing to this marriage. So it's very important if we, when we're starting out, that you do the work on you to make yourself a confident person, and they do the work on themselves to be a confident person. Now, guys, things change as we get older. Things do change. Sometimes someone gets ill, and we have to look after the other person that way. Sometimes we're not as confident because of illness. But by that time, there's been a lot of equity built up. You see? You know who people really are. You're there because you have committed and you love and you know what a privilege love is. I don't know why I always feel like I need to tear up. I feel like I tear up every time I talk about what a privilege love is because it really is. All right, let's talk about commitment. Marriage or partnership is really a major life commitment. If partners enter into the union not fully committed to its success, if they falter in their commitment, then the marriage has a weakness to it. You keep in mind that you have 3 ways of dealing with problems in your partnership. Number 1, you can divorce. It's open to everybody. Number 2 is you can not talk about anything that's bothering you, and you can sweep it under the rug and call it a day. Problem is, in 10 or 20 years, you're going to have a great big pile of crap. It doesn't have a name, so you can't really fix it under the rug. And number 3, you can learn how to work through problems together as you go along. First thing to do is choose a partner well. Second thing to do is know how to work through problems, how to talk about it. Guys, because we have 6 minutes left and I have an awful lot of things to say, we've got things to say that are things that every wife needs from her husband, every husband needs from his wife. Surprisingly, they are very similar. And qualities that end relationships, I don't happen to think they are deal breakers. Some of them are. But I want to give you different ways to think about some of those things. That'll be next week, okay? So I'll see you on Sunday at 10 o'clock. Before we say our prayer to end this show, I want to thank you very much for supporting the show like you all are doing. All of you are telling people about these shows, and you're getting the word around, and you're mounting the shows on social media. I can't tell you what that means to me, because we're here trying to create a groundswell of conscious people, of people that are turned on by this and seeking this in their lives in their workplace, in their marriages, and that's you. That you are getting the word around means a lot to us. This is a great time with COVID. Not that I am saying COVID's a great thing. It is not. People are dying out there, and that breaks my heart for these families that are suffering so, and for the individuals that are suffering so, and for the fear that's out there. But I will say this is the time for individual consciousness and for us to work on ourselves. For us to ask some hard questions of ourselves. What makes us happy? What's next? If indeed life is about novelty and growth and change, and what's next for me? I hope you are all asking yourself that and opening yourself to it and having courage, because it's a great thing. You know, one of my definitions of God that I like so much is that God is an infinite and ever-changing set of truths, always in motion. Always in motion. Action is a big part of the formula of knowing God. You being called to something and you're cooperating with that and learning what you need to and moving and growing in that. Experimenting, changing and finding out what talents and gifts and abilities you have and applying them and expanding your values. It's all part of who you are. And it's all part of your growth and the aspect of God you are. Don't get confused about God, because God presents two ways according to our understanding. Through the absence of itself, which is the child's mind, and through the fullness of itself, which is the ascended mind, and the part of you that is the closest to God's love. With that, I say, let's do a prayer. Thank you, dear God, for all of this. We open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we go out into our world, holding on to the peace that passes all understanding that we find here right now. We are going to be open, that you may tell us what step to take here, what step to take there, and we will take them in the grace and goodness and cooperation with our highest selves. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this information and for these dear people. And we say this prayer, knowing these things are fully so. In your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of every single person listening to the show. We thank you so much. And so it is. Amen. Guys, have a great week. Okay?
90 seconds.
Oh, I'm getting 90 seconds. Okay. This woman is on me. Take care of yourself. And have a great week. Be positive. Everything's a gift. Every single thing is a gift. There's even a gift in the crap. Find it. Take care. Bye-bye.